And I know that both the current American administration and the incoming Trump administration want to solve the challenges that families are facing, and Canada is part of the solution for American challenges in the work that we do together to strengthen North America.
Donald Trump's return to the White House means Canada will come under extreme pressure to up its game on defense. For years, this country's defense spending has fallen well short of its obligations under NATO. Despite agreeing to spend at least 2% of GDP on defense in 2014, Canada won't actually hit that target until 2032. And that's something our neighbors to the south certainly have noticed. Here's a taste of some of the op-eds this year alone. The Trudeau government, free rides on everyone else's dollars. Trudeau, not Trump, is the greatest threat to NATO. Justin Trudeau's dodgy defense promise. Canada is about to receive a mega mauling. And all of those came after the president-elect said on the campaign trail that he would encourage Russia to do, quote, whatever the hell they want to any NATO country that doesn't hit those targets. Here to discuss what Trump means for Canada on this file and many more is Derek Burney. He's a former chief of staff to Prime Minister Brian Mulroney and a former Canadian ambassador to the United States. Hi, Mr. Burney. Such a pleasure to welcome you to our program. Great to see you. Thanks for making the time.
Good to you, Becky. Thank you.
I wanted to start off just by leaning on your extensive expertise on the U.S. file in particular and ask you about, in your view, how significant the issue of defense spending will be as we embark on everything from trade negotiations to the potential application of tariffs.
I think it's critical for Canada. If we expect to get any attention in Washington at all on anything, we've got to do major work on our defense capabilities. I mean, it really is dismal. I can't put it too negatively, but we are laggard. We are irrelevant, and we make no contribution that I can think of that is meaningful anywhere in the world today. That's a very sad commentary on a once proud military. But, you know, experts in the U.S. Regard our military capability as hopelessly obsolete. I mean, that's never been said about us before. So, especially with, you know, you've got the security crisis between Ukraine and Russia. You've got the situation in the Middle East. You've got the problem between Taiwan and China. The global security issues are going to be paramount in coming years. And I don't think the Americans are going to wait for 8 years for us to come up to our NATO commitment. We've got to do it faster, and we've got to do it efficiently.
Do you think it is primarily about meeting that commitment? Or is there a world in which, for example, you see a really aggressive strategy when it comes to the Arctic, which former Ambassador Kelly Craft has raised in a couple of interviews on this program in the past few weeks? Like, is there a way to do it sort of strategically that lands best?
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with that ambassador more. The Arctic is our Arctic. That's our first priority, should be to defend our borders. And we're doing an abject style of defense in the Arctic today. We need to upgrade that in our own interest. In terms of NATO, that's a broader commitment. But in terms of our own interest, we have to give a higher priority to the Arctic. And I think we shouldn't wait for the endless and costly defense procurement provisions, or procedures rather. What we should do is look to get off-the-shelf modern equipment fast. And we need the money to do that, obviously, but we have to replenish the military in every possible way, and we have to do it quickly. Not in 8 years. 8 years is way too long to wait.
You mentioned the money, and you are as experienced in international affairs as you are in domestic politics. And you will know that the Parliamentary Budget Officer has recently analyzed that it's going to, even to reach that 8-year goal is going to cost double it's going to basically amount to double the spending. You're looking at $82 billion a year, something in that neighborhood of that. How does the government, provide the government, if you could, with a roadmap in which they're able to do something like that? Because it feels very impossible at the moment.
Gee, there's a very simple answer to that. We should get a clone of Elon Musk to look at the cost and waste in government in Canada and produce recommendations that will lead to a much more efficient government. You know, the fact that the public service is the fastest growing segment of our economy is not a plus. It's a drag. It's a drag on our economy. It's a drag on spending on things like defense.
Let's say that they do embark on something like that, and I should be fair to them. They have, started with the president of the Treasury Board, Anita Anand, to look at some reductions. But you're right, the public service has grown exponentially in the last number of years. They say largely due to COVID, but much of that has been sustained. Let's say they do heed that advice, and it gets them part of the way there. Do you think that Canadians would be willing to, for example, in the short term, absorb a deficit in the name of defense spending if it gets us where we want with our partners, with our allies, particularly the U.S.? Like, do you think this is something that domestic voters will care about now? Because they haven't in the past.
Well, I don't see it as a vote winner, if that's your question. It's always difficult to get the public to rally around support for defense or for diplomacy, for that matter. I mean, neither of those are priorities. The basic economy, the kitchen table issues, those are priorities. So there's room for elimination of waste, but there's a lot of scope for more efficient government. That's what we're lacking right now.
If I could turn to the broader issue of the economic relationship between our two countries, because you were so integrally involved in both the first round of NAFTA negotiations, and then also you provided a lot of counsel to the government in the second round, most recently. How likely do you think it is that our imports get that tariff that Donald Trump is threatening?
Well, I think it's something we should be concerned about, Vashi, but I don't think we should be tearing our hair out about it. Why do I say that? Donald Trump's going to have a lot of issues on his table when he takes office in late January. And I don't think the issue of trade with Canada is going to be in the top 10 of those priorities. I mean, he is trying to, in my judgment at least, revolutionize government in the United States. His cabinet choices are a good indication of that. Now, I don't think we can be apathetic. I think the threat of across the board 10 to 20% tariff imposition is real. And Donald Trump loves tariffs. He says it's the most beautiful word in the dictionary. But our history, his and ours, should tell him that that kind of attack on trade, global trade, would be extremely detrimental in every way and would generate no particular benefits. For one thing, it would be a violation of the CUSMA, as we call it. They call it the USMCA. And so we should challenge it forthrightly on the assumption that we know that it's contradictory to that agreement, an agreement that Donald Trump not only promoted, but he endorsed, as did the majority in Congress. So they're going to have a tough time, I think, dealing that way with Canada. If they do, and we have to consider retaliation, we should. There's no question about it. You can't just let that unilaterally happen. We have to be prepared. But at the same time, we have to be sober and sensible. And I have every confidence that we have an ambassador in Washington who's a trade policy expert, and I'm quite sure she will be very nimble in handling whatever the Trump administration comes up with. We don't even know yet who the Secretary of Commerce is going to be, who the USTR, the U.S. Trade Representative, is going to be. So I'm suggesting we just, don't let our hair catch on fire. Just get calm and see what comes. Don't overreact. If you overreact, we draw more attention to ourselves than we need to. If any country should be worried, it should be Mexico, because if Mexico proceeds to assemble Chinese electric vehicles, that will cause, that will be a hand grenade into the White House, and we should let the Mexicans deal with that on their own, and we should concentrate our objectives on the United States.
Well, I have just 30 seconds left, Mr. Burney. Both Danielle Smith moments ago on this program, as well as Ontario Premier Doug Ford a few days ago, advocate for the federal government cutting Mexico right out of any future negotiations. Do you support that position?
I think we need to be provocative. I think the Mexicans are doing things that it's going to give them enough difficulty with the Americans without our help. So I wouldn't recommend that we take that action. As I said, we should be concentrating on the United States, not on Mexico. just the US. Let the Mexicans are going to have a boatload of problems to deal with the Americans. They don't need our help and they won't seek our help. So let them deal with their own problems with the Americans, but we shouldn't try to force them out. That would be childish.
I'll leave it on that point. Mr. Burney, such a pleasure to get your expertise again. Appreciate it.
Good to see you guys. Thank you.